In this video, we're going to focus on creating these wonderful bubble labels here, nicely rotated, and putting them on the chart area. So, to explore how we can add the vertical labels in Chart.js 4, we need to have a boiler template ready here, like this one. To get the boiler template, please check out this link here, chartjs3.com, getting started. You can find this link as well in the description box, and once you're on here, check out or copy this entire chunk of code. Next, if you want to support my channel or get the source codes from many of my videos, check out my Patreon here. So let's start to work, because we're going to have here a quite tricky item here. So I'm going to scroll down here, and the first thing what we're going to do here is convert it into a line chart. So I'm going to say the chart type will be line. Let's save that, refresh, there we are. Next, what I want to do is I want to make another data set in here. So I'm just going to duplicate this data set to make it quite simple for us. And just say here, comma, paste that in there, save, refresh. Alright, so now we have them both, but they're on top of each other. We're going to make them stacked. To do that, I'm going to say here, x scale, I'm going to say stacked equals true. And then here, same for the y scale, stacked equals true. Save that, refresh. Now we have this. Another thing what we want to do is we want to color or fill up the background color here. So to do this, I'm going to say here comma, and I'm going to say here fill. But if you do fill true, if you save the refresh, you can see here it covers from top all the way to the bottom, which is fine if you have one, but if you have two, that will be a problem. So if I say here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another trick, because what I want to say here, fill origin. If I save this, refresh, you can see here this one will cover from the starting line to the bottom, and the next one we want to cover from here, the starting line, till the next starting line, basically from top. So it will not cover fully, but just one to the very next ending. To do this, I'm going to say here index 0 basically by putting in the number 0, refresh. You can see here now it will nicely work. Alright, so now we have this. What I want to as well is I want to remove these items, and this question came based on 4 items here, so I'm going to change these labels here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this, and it was basically like a funnel where you have the awareness. What is the awareness? Awareness. And then here we have, what is it? The inquiry or action. I forgot exactly what's the term. One is here is the, basically this one here would be the buyer. And this would be, I guess this is intention, sorry, intention. And I forgot the other one here is desire or something like that. I'm just going to put in something, but you guessed what I mean here. It's like the AIDA, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. Anyway, we have these here, but I want to make sure that these areas are being categorized clearly. We have this here, but why, or this was the question, how can we get them in here? Alright. We're going to scroll down here, and in here, first of all, I want to make sure, because these labels should be within the chart area, we're going to hide these grids here. So I'm going to say here, on the X scale, and in the X scale, what I'm going to do here, I guess we can say here the ticks. We're going to say here, display false. Save, refresh, now it's false, but we still need to remove here the grids. So we're going to say grid, display false. Save that, refresh, now that works. Alright, so now let's start to build our labels within the chart area. To do this, we have a plugin that we're going to make, and then after it becomes a bit more tricky, so make sure you pay attention now. So we're going to give here this plugin a proper term. Let's say here the vertical labels as a constant, and we can have more plugins than one, so that's why we have this array here. Then what I'm going to do here is going to say here the vertical labels plugin block to make sure that we have this block here. And I say a constant vertical label equals the ID of vertical labels. Then what I want to do is I want to draw these labels when they being here on top of our data set. So we're going to say here after data sets has been drawn, we will draw these labels, and that's what we're doing here. Then I'm going to say here the arguments chart arcs and the plugins. So now what I need to do is here an object destructuring, and if you don't know what is an object destructuring, please check out in the description box understanding chartJS object destruction. Very powerful, very useful. So I'm going to say here the CTX. I'll probably need the data. I might need the chart area and which exactly I need of the chart area. Probably need a few, but let's say a top, bottom, left and right, and width and height. So then what I need as well is the scales, and then the scales we say here X and Y, and then this will be equal to chart object. So now we have this here. What I want to do here is going to say ctx.save to save the default settings. So we have that ready. Alright, what are we going to do here? Well, we have a few things that we need to do. We have to make first this shape, which is like a rectangle with rounded border radius. So let's start to work on that. So to do this, I'm going to say here ctx.begin path. Why? I'm going to indicate I want to create a shape that is independent of anything else. Next, what I want is I want to give it a color. To make it simple, I'm going to say ctx dot, well, not stroke style, but we need to have the fill. And stroke style will be later on, so I'm getting ahead of myself. The fill style equals the color that we want. And what is the color that I want? Well, in this case, I will grab this color and I'll take the color here, put it in here, and give it an alpha value of 0.8, meaning 80% visibility and 20% transparency, very identical to the tooltip structure and color. So that's what we're going to grab. The next thing what I need to do is here is to create the shape, which is ctx.round rectangle. So this stands for round rec. And what we need here are a few coordinates. First of all, we're going to have the x starting coordinate, then we have the y starting coordinate, and then we're going to get the width, and then we get the height, and finally we get the radii, which basically would indicate the border radius. So the border radius will be nice rounded, so I think a 20 pixel rounded will be fine if our height will be about 20 pixels. So that's quite common, makes sense. Or maybe we even need to make this bigger, but we can check that later on. So the next thing what I want to do is I want to figure out where I start. Well, let's think about it. If this is here, I want to be just very nearby here for the label. And the first label would be then the awareness label. So to get this, I can get here quite simply a specific coordinate, which is the index number of the x scale, which is this here. So we can say x dot, and then I'm going to use a chartJS built-in functionality. Say get pixel for value index 0. So once you have that one, next I want to have here the vertical level, and what I really want is basically to be in the center here. So to do that, it's a bit tricky, but we're going to do some tricks. We know we have here the chart area, which is very important, and if you don't understand the chart area, please check out my video understanding the chart area for chartJS, which is as well in the description box. So I'm going to grab here the top, which is basically this point here, and then we have here somewhere the center. But maybe to make it easier, I'm just going to put in here 10, and then the width, I'll make it 100 for now. Later on I will soft code this, but let's do this first and get a visual, because that will make far more sense. Right now you don't see anything, and the reason why it doesn't draw anything is because we need to say the drawing command. If we say round rec, it is just the intention to draw, and the focus word is here intention. So now I need to say, we're done with the intention, I want to give now the command to draw the shape. All we say is fill or ctx fill, save, refresh, there we are. Alright, so now we have this, but we want to make sure that's at the bottom here. So what I'm going to do here is, well, we are now on index 0, you can see it starts here. If I say index 1, save, refresh, you can see it moves correctly there, but not on the right place. So how do I get now this back to index 0, and then we want to make sure that this is in the center. So the center in this case is the top plus whatever the width is, or sorry, not the width, the height. And the height is basically the chart area from this to there, divide by 2. Very straightforward. Divide by 2. If I save this, there we are. Look at that. It starts to get in a better position here now. Then, although you will say, well, it's not really exactly in the center. I'm not sure if this is the exact center, but it looks quite good. However, we have to probably play around a bit with how big the height is of our shape. So if our shape here, because it draws from the center down, so we have to push maybe 10 pixels up or whatever the amount is here. Well, we're going to work on that, so don't worry about that. So then we have here this width that would calculate this. But what I want to do is, because I'm going to rotate this, well, this one I will not rotate, but I want to draw this differently. So the text will be rotated. So it must be long. So what I'm going to say here, this is the width here of the shape. And then I want to make the width of the shape 30 pixels. So if I do that, alright. And now I want to make this long. So to do this, I'm going to say here 100 pixels. Save, refresh, there we are. But as you can see here, we have an issue of two things. First of all, I want to be a bit more away from the very beginning. So I have to move that. Secondly, I want to be in the center. So first of all, how do we move it away from the very left position? By saying here, whatever here the pixel index is, plus maybe 10 pixels, or something like that. Let's save that, refresh, there we are. Now I want to move it up, because we are not really in the center. We started at the center and then it goes down. So what I want to do here is I want to calculate what is the height of this, and that height can be deducted from wherever our center is to move this up. So in here we have this height, and then we know it's 100 pixels right now. Later on we need to soft code this and make it based on whatever the length of the text is. So we're going to work on that. However, for now I'll just make it like this. So I'm going to say minus 50 pixels. Just simple. And as you can see here, now it looks quite nice in the center. So I'm satisfied with this. And let's start to work now on the very next item. Here is calculating the height. And what I want to do is I want to make then not one shape, 1, 2, 3, 4. But you see the fourth shape will have a small challenge. And I'll cover that later on. So let's start to work on creating basically the shape itself with a for loop. And that's why I have a data here, or for each loop. The reason why is I want to loop through these items here, and this information will give us enough to automatically rotate. Even if we have more labels, it will understand this. So what I'm going to say here, I'm going to say data.labels to go to directly to the label, and then say here for each. And then I will say here for every label, I want to get the index, and then we put in this function arrow expression. And just to make sure you understand what I'm doing here, I'm going to say echo out, or not echo, that's PHP, but console log the label. Save this, refresh, open up developer tab, and you can see here we get the awareness, the intention, desire, and buyer, or action, whatever you want. So this works. So this is the text that we want in here. So what I can do now is I can just cut this out and put it up here, so we don't have to retype this all the time. If I save this, refresh, right now you can see it's being drawn multiple times on the same location. I don't want that. I want to say this here will be based on the index. Then if I refresh, you can see here now we have many except for one here that's just outside of the chart area and this is what we call being clipped off. So we have to solve this. So how can I do this? I'm going to use here some tricks. These are cosmetic tricks. So what I'm going to say here is I want to expand just the right side here. To do that, I'm going to say here, options, layout, and I'm going to give it a padding on the right side. So say padding of, let's say 50 pixels. 50, like that. If I save that, oh, and then maybe here padding, I don't want to do it like that, no. I want to say padding, right, 50 pixels, like that. Being very specific, because if you will do it only in the padding, it will apply padding on left, right, top, and bottom. But I only want this one, and you can see here it is showing now because it's not anymore clipped off. So we solved one part, but we're missing now these lines, or these lines are now missing. I will later on draw these lines manually. So don't worry about that. We're going to work on that as well. So we're now here. Now I want to make sure that this height will be dynamic based on our label text. So how can I figure that one out? Well, we have this here. Since we are in the label here, we can just measure what is the text size. So for this, to do that, what I'm going to say here is the let, I'm going to here, and I will say here text width equals, and I'm going to say here ctx.measure text, put in the label text, is basically the string, dot width. And this gives us the exact coordinates of how many pixels the width is. Or, sorry, how many pixels this label of text is for each of these items. Copy this. And then what I want to do is I want to put this in here, because this was 100. And then after we have to fine tune this here. Don't worry, we're going to work on that. As you can see here, we get this fine tuned, but the text width here, the label is kind of small. Am I correct? Hold on. Let me double check. Alright, so I was talking about label here, labels. Let me double check this one here. What do we have? The labels here are correct. So why don't we just do a console log just to see what's going on here? Save this, refresh. Alright. We have here this. So we have all of this here, and I did figure out, I forgot one thing here. So we're right now measuring the text here. You get these coordinates, and I was thinking this is quite short. The reason why we're missing here something is we need to make sure that the measurement is based on what we want. And what I mean by that is it measures here the label of the text, but we didn't specify the fonts and anything else. So it doesn't know what is the font size. It will get the default font size. So I'm going to say here ctx.font. This is very important. I totally forgot about this. So what I'm going to say here, what I want it bold, because it must be bold. I want it 12 pixels. And then I'm going to say here the font family sans serif. By doing that, we're then grabbing the item, and you can see it starts to work nicely. So apparently these are correct, but we're going to fine tune it later on just to be 100% certain. So now we have this here. We have this there that works. This works. Alright. Then what I want to do is, because we have here this text width, we did here -50. What I want to do here, instead of -50, I want to get here the text width divided by 2. Because whatever the text is, the width of that divided by 2 will be the center of it. So what I'm going to do here, text width divided by 2. Save, refresh. Now we are back in the center. Alright. I'm still questioning this size here, but we will see later on to test this. So now we have all of this here, and that works nice. What I do want to do here, I want to make sure that we have a bit of extra space later on for padding, or maybe we can do that later on. Alright, we have this now. What I want to test now is to create the text to see if the text will also show. So to get our text, I'm going to just go here up. And then we're going to say here, well, we have here the begin path, and maybe this one can be even placed up here. I guess we can even do this up. Hold on. Yes, what we have to do here, and this is a really tricky one for me as well, we can move this up because this one should be here. So we have this, we have the filling information here, then we have all of this information. Oh, this, sorry, this needs to be here as well. And the reason why is this information will be applied here, of course. This is a real tricky one for me as well. So now what I'm going to do is here, we're going to draw the text or write the text. So let's start to work with this. And the text is tricky as well. So what I'm going to say here is I'm going to say ctx.fill style, because I want the text in a white color. Because we have black here, so it would only make sense to have something white showing afterwards. So we have here the white. The next thing what I want to do is I want to start drawing the text. So I'm going to say ctx.fill text. And this fill text will be based on the label, whatever the label is here. And then we have here the x and y coordinates. For this one here, we need to look exactly where we want them, but basically you might say, well, we can just grab this here, put it in there, and then we have the height as well. That will be probably this. Well, not exactly eventually what we will get, but it's getting closer. You can see here now it's a bit tough to read. Let's make this red. Save, refresh. Alright, as you can see, it really fits somehow the amount of pixels here. I thought this would be more bigger in space, but anyway, it's not. However, this is a tricky part. We need to rotate this, and that rotation can be a real confusing part, but I'm going to show you an easier trick to do this. So what I'm going to do here, we're going to rotate this. We already have the text. And maybe what we can say here, before you even rotate, we're going to say ctx dot text align, put it in the center. That's number one, because right now it's alignment left. Now it's in the center, so don't worry about that. Next, what I want to do here is the baseline, because I say ctx dot text baseline, and that will be in the middle. Save, refresh. So now it's probably in there, you will not notice it. So now I want to rotate this. To rotate this, we're going to use first something else, which is the ctx.translate. And if you don't know what translate is basically like, imagine like a piece of paper on top of the canvas. And what we want to say, like this awareness or this text here is like an independent piece of paper. So that when we rotate, we don't rotate the entire canvas. No, we only rotate the text that we want to pinpoint. That makes it just a bit more easier for us. So to do this, I need to grab here this information. I'm going to grab this, and then we're going to put it in here. Then what I want to do is I want to grab all of this information, put it in there. So we have this first translation of the one that we want to rotate. Here then, we can say this will be equal to 0, and this will be 0 because there will be no more changes. By doing this, we're now able to rotate. Oh, alright, as you can see, it starts to do something already. So what I need to do is I need to stop this effect as well. So I'm going to put in here below ctx.restore. Let's see if that works. Probably we also need to have a translation that does the opposite later on. Don't worry, we'll work on that. Anyway, make sure you have the restore. If it doesn't work for you, it means that you probably forgot this ctx.save. Very important. These two have to go hand in hand with the translate, and then after now, I'm going to focus on the rotation. So for the rotation, I need to get the angle. So I'm going to create here a very simple constant here. Just here above, constant, and we're going to say this will be the angle. And we're going to say a math.pi divided by 180 degrees. So basically, I just get the single degree. Why? Because one pi is 1/2 circle, and it will be very hard to calculate 1 pi. If you want a full circle, it's 2 pi. If you want a quarter, it's like 0.25 pi or something like that. That's too complicated. We want to have angles, so we can do 90, 180, 270, and 360. Simple numbers we all are familiar with. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the rotate. I'm going to say ctx.rotate, and the rotation will be 90 degrees multiplied by the angle. Very straightforward. Save this, refresh. Alright, so now we get one part here, but you notice what happened to the others. Don't worry, we're going to work on that. So we have this awareness that needs to be in here, and I think it will just fit here exactly once we have it working. But if you say, well, I don't want it like that, I want to have this rotated 270, there you are. You can easily rotate this in the way you want. So you can play around with that what you want to do. So we have this here, and I'm sure you will say, okay, what about the others? How do we get the others back? What I'm going to do is we just rotate it back into the original direction. By doing that, there we are. But because it's still being rotated because of the restore and how this all works, we need to make sure that the translation is also translated back into its original position. I'm sure there's a better way. I just couldn't find it. So that's just a heads up. So we're going to say here negative. We just need to do exactly everything in the opposite direction. And then plus negative 10, negative top plus, I guess, negative height, divide by 2, and then minus, we have to make sure that we have to plus minus, I guess, negative or something like that. Well, we have to see on that one. That will be a bit of a tricky one, or maybe I can just remove this. And let's see how that works. Alright, as you can see here, I'm getting slightly off. So maybe I need to do here plus. This was plus. And let's remove this one then here. Let's see. There we are. Alright, so now we are nicely in position. And you can see it's a bit of a tricky item for me as well. What I want to do is I want to push this text now a bit more to the right for all of them. Because they're all now in the right position here. This and this needs to be exactly in, I guess, mirror reflection. So if I want to push this text a little bit more to the right, I need to say here plus 20, for example. There we are. But by doing that we also need to do here minus 20. There we are. And I think we can do plus 25. This will be minus 25. And probably the reason for this is we want to be in here the 30. And then I think the amount of pixels is 12 pixels or 10 pixels basically for the font size. So somewhere between there. So you can play around with that. That's the only thing you need to play around with. So now we have this. I want to push this down a bit more. So how are we going to push this down? Well, we need to figure out here probably the width of this. Let's see, here we have the text width, divide by 2. Let's see. Alright, so as you can see here, I figured out what the issue was. So you can see here we're going a bit more up. And the reason why we're going more up is because of this text width here. If you're in the center, it will be automatically in the correct position. So I just need to remove this. We don't need this excess of code. If I save that, refresh, there we are. But as you can see here, and maybe you say as well, can we add up some padding on the top and bottom? And the answer is yes. How do we do this? Remember I said here earlier, if I make here plus 10 pixels, what will happen? You'll have like a 5 pixel up and down as well. So now we're done with this, and I guess we can convert this into a white color here. And you can see it's slightly here transparent, and we could even make this a bit more transparent if necessary by seeing it like that. There we are. Anyway, I'll just leave that as it is. This is a bit more better. So now we are done with this part. But you might say, well, what about these lines here? How can I extend this? Because this looks a bit unappealing. Alright, let's draw these lines now. To draw the lines, I need to make sure that the lines are here above and not down. The reason why is we're going to draw the lines first, and then these items or these bubble labels will be on top of the lines. If we don't do that, the lines on this specific area here will be on top of the buyer label, and I don't want that. So I'm going to create now our basically our labels. So to do this, or the lines, to do this, I'm going to go into the Y, and then we say here the ticks. And this is the reason what I want to show you is because you can see these lines, they're already here with all the right coordinates. And this is very important because if we change this, these coordinates will automatically align as well. So I'm just going to borrow that and redraw the missing parts. So how do we do this? You see here this, and then you get here the value, which is basically the Y index of get value for Y. Well, don't worry, I'm going to show you right now. So I'm going to say here y.ticks dot for each. So we're going to do a for each loop here. And then I'm going to say here for every tick, I want to get here as well the index, and then here function arrow expression, and then in here we're going to do this for each loop. I'm going to say here as well ctx.begin path, because what I want to do here is to create a new line or shape that is independent of each other shape, and here is the same story basically. So what I'm going to do here then is I'm going to say here color ctx.stroke style to define the background color or the line color, and the line color is RGBA. This is just the official Chart.js color 0.0.0.01. There we are. So basically black, but then with a very light transparency for 90% transparency and 10% visibility. Then what I want to do is I want to make sure that the line is 1 pixel. So I'm going to say here ctx.line width equals 1 pixel. Once I did that, I want to draw the lines. So I'm going to say ctx.move tool. And the move tool will get the x and y coordinates, which will be a starting point. So our starting point will be at this point here. This is the right side of the chart area. And then I want to just go to the, keep on going to the right until infinity basically. It doesn't matter really, because it will clip off the moment we're outside the canvas. So I can say here plus 1000 pixels, 100 pixels, whatever you want, or whatever you're comfortable with, doesn't matter. I'll make it a high number so it will not be a problem. So I'm going to say the right side here, this is the starting point, and this here will be y.getPixel for value, and then the value would be What is the value? Well, the value is this item here, which is in the tick.value. Then what I want to do here is ctx.line2 to connect the starting point here to whatever we want, or to infinity on to the right side. So I'm going to say copy this. I'll keep this here intact, but I'll just say here write plus 250 pixels. That will be more than enough. You'll cover everything that you can imagine. And if you need even more, you can do that as well, because it will clip off the moment it is outside the chart or on the outside the canvas. So it doesn't matter. So then what I want to do here is say ctx.stroke to draw the line. And then of course we're going to say ctx.restore to undo whatever we just did. If I save this, refresh, now as you can see here, we get these lines and they look absolutely perfect and identical. And as you can see here, beautiful, absolutely phenomenal. And that's basically it. That's how we can play around with this.